Hey guys, this is God of Politics. I'm going to a brand new video, but before we get started with this video, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also follow me on Twitter and join the Discord. Those are both linked down in the description. But as I often do, as I have often been doing for the past couple weeks, I have started off this video looking at the 2020 electoral map, which currently has Joe Biden leading the popular vote by 4 percentage points, leading by approximately 6.2 million votes, and he is winning the Electoral College 306 to 232. But what I do want to talk about in this video is the suburbs, arguing why the GOP is losing the suburbs and why they should be very, very worried about it. So some of these states that Joe Biden flipped in this election, you can very clearly see that suburban shift. One of the best examples is Georgia. Another good example is Arizona. For example, if we look in Arizona, we see Maricopa County, the most populous county in the entire state, trended 5 points Democrat. Joe Biden cracked 1 million votes in that county. The only other county where he did that was LA County. I don't even believe that he got it in Cook County. If we go down here to Cook County. Okay, so he got it in Cook County, LA County, and now Maricopa County. Those are the only three counties that he cracked 1 million votes in. We can also see that shift tremendously in the state of Georgia, particularly in the Atlanta area. And if we go to the trend here, we can see huge trends that were on par, if not exceeding the trends in 2016. We see areas like Gwinnett County trending 12 points, Rockdale trending 15 points, Cobb trending 12. You can see Fulton trending 5, Henry trending 16, and so on and so on. That is the main area that has the big population hubs of the entire state, and that is what propelled Joe Biden to a narrow but a sure victory in the state of Georgia by 0.25 percentage points. And you can very clearly see this suburban trend, and it didn't even occur just in the states that Joe Biden won. It occurred pretty much nationwide. It's very clear in areas like Dallas as well. Obviously you have that Rio Grande Valley area that trended very Republican, 30, 20 something points in a lot of cases here. But you also have the fact that, that was greatly outnumbered by the fact that areas like Tarrant County, Denton County, Collin County, Dallas County, Kaufman County, Ellis County, Montgomery County, Williamson County, there's so many counties in Texas that just have huge populations. You can crack hundreds of thousands in multiple counties over here that far outweigh those Rio Grande Valley and these other border counties along here. And so that gave Biden a big boost in the state of Texas. It was seen in many other states too. It was even seen in states as Republican as Oklahoma, where you saw a 9.4% shift in Oklahoma County. It was seen, in the Minneapolis area, where Hennepin County swung 8.3% Democrat. It was seen in Philadelphia area, in the Northern Virginia area, in the Colorado area. Colorado has some of the craziest shifts. For example, if we look at Arapahoe County here, it's pretty hard to pronounce, but Arapahoe County here, you can see that Joe Biden won the county by 24.6 percentage points. If we go back to the election of 2012, Barack Obama only won this county by 8.4 percentage points. So you're seeing double-digit swings over a period of 8 years. And I've, been asked this many times before, and I've addressed this many times before. Is it because of Donald Trump? No, the trend is not because of Donald Trump, but it is certainly exacerbated by him. Why is it exacerbated by him, and how can we tell? Well, you look at the House result, and you can see that Republicans down ballot did definitely outperform Donald Trump, particularly in those suburban areas. They actually underperformed Trump sometimes in, some of those more rural areas. Not too many cases of that, but that did happen. But in most suburban areas, you can see that the House Republicans outperformed Donald Trump. But you still compare that to, 2-3 cycles ago, they are much more Democrat. And that really shows you there that the suburban shift still will exist. Could you see a bounce back from that in 2022? Sure. Could you see a slowing of it in 2024 with a Republican candidate that is more friendly to the suburbs? Sure. But that trend is still going to be there. Just like the rural trend is there for the Republican Party, but the reason that is it is so much more consequential that this suburban trend is happening is because suburbs, make up half of the population. And sure, suburbs are kind of a self-identifying thing, and we get the numbers based off of people self-identifying where they live, so maybe not that many people live in the suburbs, but it's still the largest out of any group of urban, suburban, rural. And you see the different changes in terms of population, in terms of the demographics of these different regions, and you see that these suburban areas are gaining in population, the rural areas are losing in population. And that is corroborated by what we do see in this article by Pew Research Center. Is a very good article. I do suggest that you check it out. And it shows a number of different key pieces of information as to why the suburban areas are trending Democrat and why I do expect this trend to continue. So the number one area that I do want to look at first is the percent of the total population that lives in each county type. So in suburban counties from 2000, 2012 to 2016, we see that there's been a 2% increase in suburban areas. There's been a stagnation in the urban areas, and then there's been a 2% decline in the rural areas. And that trend could actually be accelerated when you see the fact that, you know, the economy isn't doing too well now. People are going to move to the suburbs, to the cities to find new jobs. That's a similar thing to what we saw in 2008 when, the rural areas just did not have the economies to hold up. And you look at, for example, the capital cities, 49 out of 50 capital cities in this country trended Democrat because they have economies that hold up. And what we're seeing is this big transformation where the working class is becoming more Republican and the upper class, or the middle to upper class, is becoming more Democrat. And that is corroborated by what we're seeing with the suburbs, these more affluent areas that are trending Democrat, whereas the rural areas, which have, stagnating economies, stagnating populations, and are trending very, very Republican. So, we see the share of immigrants that's going up in these suburban counties. We see the share of white voters, which has declined in these suburban counties as well, whereas it hasn't, had that same kind of effect in the rural counties. And, we look at the counties that aren't rural. It says the majority of counties are rural, but they still only make up 17% of the population. So you see the gray areas here make up 17% of the population. They cover a lot of the area, and most areas are suburban. Most counties are suburban, and you can see a lot of those key suburban counties in areas like Arizona, areas like Texas, Florida, Georgia, Virginia, Pennsylvania, New Jersey especially. Every single county in New Jersey is suburban, with the exception of maybe one that's urban, but there's no rural counties there. And we can see that the growth has definitely has definitely been very clear. It says suburbs have gained population from international and domestic migration, while rural areas fell behind. So you can see here the total international migration by county type. Urban areas, 7% growth. Suburban areas, 5.4% growth. Rural areas, 0.6% growth. You look at domestic migration, urban areas are actually losing population, whereas the suburbs are actually growing by 6.4%, and rural areas are losing again. And you see the net change between international and domestic migration is that suburban areas are growing by 11.7% by 11.7 million. It's in millions, not percent. 11.7 million between 2000 and 2014. Urban areas have basically stagnated, and rural areas have stagnated with a little bit of a small decline. And you can see that those population losses are largest in the Midwest. You can see, based on this electoral map, which I will talk about later, the areas that are losing electoral votes, areas like Michigan, areas like West Virginia, areas like Pennsylvania, Minnesota. All four of those states are losing electoral votes. Ohio could possibly lose another electoral vote. And in the future, you will see that these areas will have a lot less electoral votes. Illinois is also losing an electoral vote. These are the areas, with the exception of Illinois and, maybe Indiana, but these are the areas that are trending Republican. Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio. These are states that probably will be Republican states in the future, maybe to the least extent Pennsylvania, but that could still be a Republican state, and it's definitely more Republican than it used to be. Whereas the areas that are trending Democrat, these areas with suburban areas that dominate the country, dominate the population of that state, I should say, are growing in population. This is the projected 2024 electoral map. You have a net gain of 3 in Texas, 1 in Arizona, 2 in Florida, 1 in North Carolina, 1 in Colorado. So those areas are getting population, and those areas are trending a Democrat. And, we have many more pieces of information here. It says older adults are a higher share of the population in rural areas than in urban suburban counties. You can see that the percent change in age groups, the only area that's really seeing any real growth amongst young people is suburban areas, and young people are predominantly Democrat. Young people are predominantly contributors to the economy, particularly people as they get into their middle ages, once they get a better job. And you can see that those people are going to be in those suburban areas with college educations, and that's where you see that correlation of those voters becoming more Democrat, where you see that the growth of older voters is, more clear in those rural areas. You can see it highlights a typical urban, suburban, and rural county, and you can see that there's many different key similarities between those counties. And it says U.S. urban counties have no racial or ethnic majority. That's very clear about the urban areas, and those suburban areas are growing with their non-white population as well. It says immigrants are a rising share of the population in each county type as well. You can see that it went from 8% to 11% in suburban areas, 20 to 22% in urban areas, 3 to 4% in rural areas. So that's another big growth in the suburban areas, and it's growing in the rural areas too, but you have a lot of other demographics outweighing that, which is causing it to trend Republican. You have the decline in population. You have more older voters, or older people in general. You have less college-educated voters, and that is not helping their case in terms of, them having a bigger share of the electorate and them having more control of the electorate. Growing share of residents of all county types have college degree. This is very key. You can see that there's a big growth of people that have college education, not just in the suburban areas in this case. And so what you're going to see is that suburban areas are having the fastest growth in terms of college graduation, and those voters are becoming more Democrat. And it's not, some people make the argument that colleges are doing bad things to make people more democratic, but that argument doesn't really hold up, because these are voters that are becoming more Democrat, at their age of 40, at the age of 50. Does that have anything to do with college? No, it's just a correlation that we're seeing with people becoming more Democrat and people that have a college education. You can also see here the final point I will look at from this article, which again is very informative. I will link it down in the description. You should go check it out. It says the prime age employment has declined in rural areas overall. Employed 25 to 54-year-olds in millions, it has gone up 2 million, which is 4% in suburban areas, up 12% in urban areas, down 11% in the rural areas. So what you're seeing, just to kind of sum this up again, is you're seeing rural areas that are becoming more educated, but at a slower rate than the other areas. They're losing population. They're becoming more white compared to the rest of the country, and they're having a less share of the electorate. But what's important about the suburbs is that, again, they're growing in population the fastest. They're not as white as they used to be. They're becoming more educated, and all of those help the Democratic Party. So looking at this on an electoral map here, this is kind of the states that are pretty much safe at this point. Former battleground states like Colorado, New Mexico, Virginia, they're no longer battleground states. That is in part, at least in especially in the cases of Colorado and Virginia, because of those suburban voters. Suburban areas, if they continue to trend Democrat, you're going to have areas which you would think trend Republican, like the Rust Belt. States like Minnesota are going to become or stay Democratic states. States like Texas will inevitably become Democratic states. States like Arizona, states like Nevada will stay Democrat. States like Georgia, even states like North Carolina, which currently are quite close, still in the Republican column. But, the growth of those suburban areas is very crucial to the population and the electorate of that state. That is going to make North Carolina a blue state eventually, and you can even see Florida become a blue state again, which I could definitely see. And at that point, Pennsylvania could stay a Democratic state. And even if you win Wisconsin and Michigan, and sure, somehow you pull off Florida and Pennsylvania, and even if you pull off New Hampshire and Minnesota, you just cannot do it anymore due to the fact that suburban population, even if you give them North Carolina and Georgia, you still wouldn't get there. You still wouldn't get to 270. It all comes down to Texas, which has such an influence of those of those Republican voters actually in the suburbs. And so, if you want to look at the rural areas in the state of Texas, they don't actually have that many people in them. Most of the voters that the Republican Party does get are still in these suburban areas. They're still getting 200,000 votes in these big counties, these exurban counties, even still the suburban counties. But those voters are leaving the Republican Party, and it should definitely be a worry for them. Now, there was a lot of talk, how much would the suburbs trend? And I was saying that they would trend a lot, and people doubted me for that. And they actually ended up trending more than what I anticipated them to trend. And so that is really surprising to me, because what you're seeing is that this trend is, again, not only because of Donald Trump, it is exacerbated by him, but it is not because of Donald Trump. If you want to comment down, we can talk about why I think that, but I think it is very, very accurate in my opinion, because I think based on the data that we've seen, this trend is not going to reverse anytime soon. But the silver lining for the Republican Party, if they somehow get locked out of the presidential races because they can't win Arizona and Texas and Georgia anymore, they can still win the Senate. They'll have a clear hold on the Senate for a while. If we look at the current Senate map, map, we make Arizona, Colorado blue, we make Alabama red here, we can see that, you know, the Republicans will have a stranglehold on the Senate for quite a while now, because even if they lose Texas, even if they, you know, lose both senators in Texas, they lose both senators in Georgia, both senators in North Carolina, and, you know, they make gains in Michigan and Pennsylvania, you know, they're going to have the majority, basically, no matter what. Even if you won the 2 senators in Florida, you know, and you won in Maine, that only gets you to 50. So it's going to be very difficult to be able to win if you are the Democrats in the Senate, but it's going to be very easy for you to win if you are at the presidential race. And so this, again, I've talked about this before, it creates a lot of gridlock in the system when you're going to have a Senate that favors the rural areas, that favors the small states, which are predominantly Republican, at least for now. It's not always been that way, but the way it is now, the nature of the Senate favors the Republican Party. And so if that trend continues, the Senate is going to be pretty strong Republican, whereas the presidential race is going to be pretty strongly in favor of the Democrats. And that creates a lot of gridlock, and not much is really going to get done. But anyway, I did want to talk about this because the suburbs are very, very crucial, and they did trend hard blue this cycle, and I did want to talk about that because, again, it's a very, very important topic. But again, guys, thank you all for watching this video. Please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also follow me on Twitter and join the Discord. Those are both linked down in the description. But again, guys, thank you all for watching this video, and I will see you guys later.